Hi everyone, my name is Manuel Martinez, and this is another episode of Career Downloads, where each episode I basically hit the refresh button, bring on a different guest to really learn more about their background, their job history, and really try to uncover any techniques or tips that they've picked up along the way as far as how they've managed their career. So with me today, I have Carlos Matal. So welcome, Carlos.
Thank you.
And if you can just real quick, just tell me where you're at now. Like, you can tell me your employer, not tell me, but basically tell me what is your current role, and just a quick summary. We'll get to it eventually, but just so that people can understand where you are currently at. Give me your role and what you do there.
Yeah. So right now I'm working with a small gaming company, casino gaming company. Since we're in Las Vegas, right? It's the technology that, like the industry that is kind of like the biggest industry in town. I work for this company, and it's my role is QA lead. I've been doing QA for a long time. It's software QA because we also do manufacturing, but it's, my role is more like it's software versus hardware, because we also have hardware guys, but it's separate. So I do software automation, and I'm a lead, but the company is pretty small. So we don't have more than, I would say, less than 10 engineers. So I only lead one person and a couple of interns in a couple of projects. I'm not really like a manager or a supervisor. It's just I just kind of like decide what we're doing when it comes to testing.
Got it. Okay. And what I've been doing with all my guests now, so now we kind of know where you're at now, we're going to go back, and if you just can give me again, share as much or as little as you want, but just give me a summary of kind of where you kind of grew up, and then what eventually got you interested into technology.
So I'm from El Salvador. I was born and raised over there, and I was studying electrical engineering over there in the National University. So that's what got me. Well, actually, my high school was like an electrician. I forgot how it was called. Something like electrotechnia, something like this. Is like electrical and electronics at the same time. And it was a 3-year high school. So that's what got me into technical stuff, let's say.
Okay.
So after that, I like whatever things I learned about electricity, and then I decided to study electrical engineering. And in electrical engineering, they introduced everything related to computers. So that's how I got into computers, and from there, I wasn't able to finish over there because I decided to move before I completed my degree. So I came here to the U.S. and completed my degree here.
And so then you completed your electrical engineering degree?
Yeah.
Okay. So how much did you finish in El Salvador versus how much you finished here?
So the National University, Universidad Nacional del Salvador, it's a pretty hard university. Like, you have to actually study and study and study. It's like for engineering, you had to have you couldn't do it just by yourself because it was pretty demanding. So you had to have a group of friends with whom you could study, right? So I studied there like 5.5 years, but still I still had 1 more year to go because it's pretty hard. So to give you an example, there was only, like, when you already advanced, let's say like on your 3rd or 4th year, let's say out of 40 people in a class, maybe 10 were passing that class. And if you have 5 classes at the same time, there was almost no way you will pass all of them. So you had to choose. It's like, okay, I think I'm not going to pass this one, so I'm going to focus on these other 3 or these other 4. So it takes a long time. A lot of the people that I knew that they were ahead of me, they were like, it goes like getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And we start like maybe 250 people on the first year, which is nothing really electrical engineering related, but more like calculus and physics and stuff like that. And then when you are about to graduate, there are like 5 guys graduating, or 3 guys, or 2, sometimes 1. It was crazy.
Wow.
So that's why it's supposed to be like 5 years, but I was already in my fifth and a half year, and I still had 1 more year to go. When I decided to move to the U.S. because I had residency since I was a little kid, but I never lived here, and it was gonna expire, so I had to renew it. It's like, okay, do I stay and forget about living in the U.S., or do I move and see if I can continue my education over there? And that's what I did.
And where did you move to? So when you kind of came in,
I came to Las Vegas, or like my first town, let's say.
okay.
I came to Las Vegas, and then maybe like 3 years ago, I was living in Richmond, near Richmond, Virginia, for like 4 years. So I live only in Las Vegas and in that area. Okay. My entire time here.
So then when you moved to Las Vegas, so I'm assuming you finished your degree here in Las Vegas, so you went to UNLV,
Yes.
Finished that, and probably, like you said, like a year left?
No, I had to study another 4 years here because I was also working. So at the end, it took me. They gave me a lot of credits. It wasn't easy to get the credits because they're trying for you to take more credits and pay. So I had to kind of like fight. It's like, hey, how do you want me to take the electronics 1 lab that takes several credits, and all the Fridays I have to be there just for this thing, when you already gave me credits for electronics 1, electronics 2, electromagnetism? Is like, I don't need that. It's something where you learn the basic things, and I already passed that. It's like, so it took me a year to get all the credits that I actually needed or wanted. And that's why, and I was also working, so it was like a part-time student, full-time worker. So it took me 4 years. I think in total, I started in El Salvador in 2000, and I graduated in 2010. So 10 years.
But you finished.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the important part.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so you graduated as electrical engineer, and then I'm assuming you started to try to look for those types of positions. And then how did that?
It's interesting because in Latin America, I think it's a little bit different from how you learn, how you know that work is in the U.S. Here, most people know that you have to get experience so then you can get a better job. Over there, we just think, as long as I have my degree, I'm set. And it wasn't like that. And I was thinking, it's interesting. I saw your book over here, Ego. Is like, I came with ego. I was thinking, I'm an electrical engineer. Come on, I'm not gonna be, I want a good job like right away. And it wasn't like that. So then, looking for jobs. The sad part, in my opinion, from living in this town is that maybe not most, but a lot of the companies that go and recruit from the university, they're related to military stuff, and I didn't want to be part of that. So, and I couldn't because I had family in El Salvador. So if you need a secret clearance or something like this, they're like, if you have, your sister is over there, so no way you're gonna get to the, those top secret things. So, and because in electrical engineering, you work with secret stuff, right? So it wasn't something that I could get in, but I also didn't want to. And I was lucky that casino gaming, it's all over town, right? So I could get into testing. Pretty much, I started working for the university at the beginning. Well, actually, I started in IT for a casino, but that wasn't engineering to me. It was just like like some support. It was good for me because I didn't speak English. I could understand it, I could read it, but speaking it, still, I'm still learning. So I was lucky to apply for a job in a small casino where my supervisor was really cool. He pretty much told me, I see that your English is not good, but if you improve it, I'm gonna give you a chance. So you can start in the IT department, but you're gonna have to answer the phone. And when you answer the phone, you have to get better at it, right? So it pushed me to learn. I was like, whenever I was on the phone, some people were like, oh, it's okay, I can understand. And some people were like, why did you put this guy answering the phone? It's like, he doesn't understand anything. So I had to do it pretty fast. It's like kind of like a couple of months, and people were already saying like, hey, this guy is doing a good job because now we can understand him, stuff like that, right? So it helped me speed up the language barrier that I had, or I still have, not that bad anymore.
So then you did the kind of like a help desk or answering phones for a while. And it sounds like you improved quite a bit, and people were noticing not only just the language barrier, but I'm sure you were also picking up the skills to be able to help people with their actual problems.
Yeah.
So then how did, what made you then at that point, as you're gaining these skills, what either propelled you to move on to the next role? Did you promote up? Did you move out? And kind of what was that process like?
Yeah, the way I am is that it does, even when I came and I didn't have a good job, let's say I was bussing tables, I was already thinking I'm gonna be a server, So I was like, I stole a menu so I can study it and know what the ingredients are, and I'm gonna be a server, like. So when I was in IT, I was like, I'm gonna be the director, or I'm gonna be, and I was hoping to grow, right, on my career. However, the company was bought by another company, and they relocated us from a town that is outside of Las Vegas to something in Vegas. And I was able, I don't remember exactly how it was, but while the transition was happening, I found a job with the university. And because I was still taking classes, I went to the interview, and I liked the manager, right? What he told me, the project was about some imaging. It was really cool because instead of getting the transcripts from students from other places that were gonna study in UNLV, everybody has to type in, like you study these classes and you had these grades, and then some of these are gonna be transfer credits, and some other ones you have to take, right? So they had this OCR, optical character recognition project with the scanner and the software, that it was going to be kind of automating the input of this transcript. So it was a new project, and I was pretty much the one that started it. Like, it was the idea of the manager, and they had everything bought up, but they didn't have anybody to do it. So I started with another guy, and the other guy was also studying, and he didn't have a lot of time. So it was pretty much just me. And it's funny because that's what made me get into automation, because it was like a 30 minutes or 35 minutes for every transcript, like all the fields you have to put so that the scanner was grabbing for different templates. Let's say the University of like some University of California, a lot of people comes to Vegas because it's like very close, right? So they had like, let's say 3,000 students per year. So they wanted, this is a priority. You have to have the template for this one, so that we, process these new students faster. So while doing that, it was like a huge manual for this software, right? And it's like old school software, old school by the time, right? I think it was like 2006, or 2007, I remember. It was just so slow, and I had to do this, and it was boring. I had to click here, click there, and create this, and it's like, so I told my manager, it's like, there must be an easier way to do this. Is it okay if I take some time to research? And he's like, yeah, take your time. If you find something, it's gonna be pretty cool. And I found some, I think it was called AutoIt. It's a Windows-based automation software that could do the clicks, enter fields, text fields, put some text in the fields, and I found it, and that was kind of like my first thing that I how do you say, like, when you do something better, like you improve something.
Right, it's the first time that you improved a process or a project.
So it went from like 30 to 35 minutes to 5 minutes, and that was like, and I got into it. I like it. It's the first time I was, well, in school I did some programming because I had to do it, not because I needed it, right? But over there I wrote some scripts that made things easier, and I also learned about regular expressions, because sometimes the 8, if it was thinking that it was a B, or the B was thinking it was an A when it comes to grades, So I learned about regular expressions and automation at the same time. So it was what made me, I guess, be who I am now when it comes to work. Now I'm a QA lead and I do a lot of automation testing.
So then that process, I'm sure that at least at a minimum with your manager kind of gave you a lot of recognition to say, hey, this is somebody that, I mean, you could have kept going and doing the click, click, click. And I've been there. I've had those types of roles where the first time it's good to learn what the process is, but then it gets boring to just.
Yeah, and you can even do it wrong because you're already doing it for so long, repetitive, right? So it's like, whatever. You just so the machines don't get bored. They just do it.
And did that help get you recognition, a promotion,
Yeah,
raise,
my
anything?
manager was a really cool guy. I really like working with him, and he's like, I'm gonna request a raise for you, but because I was kind of like not an intern, but they had a different name for that position. It's like he's a student first and then a worker, right? So universities normally have well-paid positions, right? But I wasn't one of those. I was like a very low pay. But he's like, oh, you deserve this. And then the review was good things about me, and then they gave me a little raise, and it was good mostly for me, to find out that there are things that can be improved. And I don't know if after that or before, but I'm always trying to find something. If I have to do this many times, I want to do it easier or more efficient. Even when like if I'm driving to work, and I take the roads that takes me in the map, right? But then I find, no, if I take this other road, it's gonna be better, and I just keep improving little things.
And then as you're going through, you're working and you're being a student, did you stop working at UNLV when you graduated, or how did that?
Because the salary was low, I wanted to get out, right, and make more money. So I believe, and I was also partying at the same time. I'm from El Salvador, and over there, like you learn, not everybody, right? But I had friends that whenever we had a test after we celebrate, we go have some drinks or whatever, right? So I never work over there. My mom was taking care of, school and my clothes and where I was living. And I was already old. I came to the US when I was 24 and I never worked before. So I had to come and work, Whenever I had money, I wanted to have fun. So it was the busiest time because I was working, studying, and partying at the same time. So I needed more money, If you want to party, you need a bit more money.
It's not free.
That's right. So that was that. Everybody wants to make more money, right? So that was the main thing, make more money to get out of the university. But at the same time, the university pays really well. There were some guys that it was like a position that never existed in my department was created because some guy that was on the top left. And in my opinion, it was like, I don't mean to speak bad about the university, but this probably happens everywhere, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to create this new position because we need this, and I'm going to put my body here. And this guy, the salaries are public. So I saw this guy coming in. Now he was my boss. He's making like 5 times what I make, and he's not doing a lot. So I also wanted to leave because it didn't feel right.
No, I understand, right? So I also worked in not for university. I worked for the college, but I also worked in public sector, and like I said, salaries are public, right? It's transparency because it's government role. So then you're seeing somebody who's doing less, making more. Mm-hmm. So you decided to leave, and you left to go work somewhere else to make more money, but still continued, obviously, going to school.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So where did you decide to go from there?
So I didn't have that many options that I knew. I was kind of new, Actually, I already had maybe 4 years living here. But casinos everywhere, right? And for entry level jobs, I went into they call them regulatory testing because the casinos have different regulations with different jurisdictions. So there are a couple of labs that test machines and systems, and they always take in people without experience because the testing is pretty simple. You don't have to know programming. If you know it's better, you can do other things. But it's good because like people that just came out of school can get those jobs. So that's how I started with testing.
Right, and start to gain some of that experience that everybody looks for, right? Because a number of times everybody has said, right, like, hey, I get a degree, at least here in the US, like, I got this degree, everybody's gonna hire me. Not the case, right?
No.
It just never works out that way.
Yeah.
So then you're starting to gain experience as a kind of a QA tester.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing the same thing? So it sounds like once you got there, you understand you first, and that's one of the things I've told people before, right? Is before you go through and before you can automate or improve, you have to learn the process, right? So how long do you think it took you to kind of understand the process of what you were doing? And then how did you learn to eventually go through and start to improve it?
It took some time because it's a regulatory laboratory, right? Like it approves systems and machines to go into the casinos. So they do it for all the different manufacturers, right? So everyone has their own system. And then you have to understand how this system works to, let's say, I don't know if it's not to consolidate, but when you make sure that these numbers match these numbers when it comes to accounting. I forgot the word.
Like the reconciliation?
Reconciliation of, the data. You test, you gamble, you do this, you hit a jackpot or whatever, or you cash out, stuff like this. Kind of, I think they were calling it, or they call it interoperability testing, making sure that this machine works with all the systems, or that this system works with all the machines. So it was taking time, but like they had, let's say, experts already working on this system that was training us, like the new guys, like this guy is the one that knows more about this X system. So he's the one that's going to train you. And then they also had a division of, if I work with this supervisor, we take care of the kiosks and this other system. But these guys take care of these other two systems, kind of. So it wasn't that hard, but they want you to know just in case, just in case somebody doesn't come, they sick, so you can cover for them, kind of thing.
So it's more of a time. It just took time because it takes a while to kind of learn the process.
There wasn't a lot of innovation. It was like, we have these regulations, you have to make sure that this, like, check mark, it passes, it does this, it does this, it does this, and then you have to know how to move the things in the system. It's like, okay, run this report and it's okay. It wasn't something very challenging, but it took time. And if you don't know about the machines, right, you have to open a lot of words that you never heard, like a drop. What is a drop? Taking the cash out of the box and stuff like this. So but I only lasted there maybe 6 months or something like that because I was already looking for other. And then I went to one of those manufacturers, one of the big ones, worked for them for like, I think 2 years. And then they were laying off people all the time. So I was chosen for one of these layoffs, and then I was laid off, and then I was like, I've been always very confident, and I think that's something, the purpose of this, what you're doing is to so other people can get some examples, or that is going to be useful for them in their career search. You got to be confident. If you are not, then it's harder to grow. I was like, hey, I don't know for how long I'm gonna be without a vacation, without weeks of vacation or whatever. So when they laid me off, I went on vacation to El Salvador. Spent there like almost a month, and then I came to look for jobs because I was always looking for jobs. I know how much time consuming it is. So I was like, no, I need to, I don't have a lot of money because I wasn't making a lot of money, and I'm not making a lot of money, but much better than before, right? So I was like, I'm gonna take a break, because if you just keep looking, it's like it's like another job just to be looking for jobs.
Right, and at the same time, you also don't want to burn out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just understanding and working, and not even just the job search, right? But if you're constantly trying to, even as much as you enjoy it, right? At some point, you need to take a break, and it sounds like, I remember going to school, and that was kind of stressful, and I would part-time jobs here and there, but nothing where I was supporting myself. But I mean, if you're going to school, you're working, you're doing all this, like, I
And I had a baby too.
oh, around that time. Okay.
Yeah. So it was like we went. Let me think. Oh, this time I already had two. It was like a newborn. He didn't walk yet. When I spoke with their mom and it's like, let's just go to El Salvador, take a couple weeks over there, and then when I come back, I'm gonna get back to the job search. So it was good.
And did you start? So you waited until you got back to start job
To
searching?
continue.
Okay.
Because it depends of what companies nowadays is much faster. They'll check and they give you, oh, no thank you, or let's go to the next step. Back in the days, and especially for the casino industry here in Las Vegas, is like you apply for a job in January and they answer to you in September. So it was like, I'm not gonna be waiting to see. So I already had applied for many things, but then it's like now that I don't have a job and I don't know, you always worry about when you start. It's like, okay, you have no vacation until after 3 months. You can maybe take, I don't know. It used to be like that. I don't know if now is like that, but you only get 2 weeks until you have 2 years or something like that. So I wanted to use the time that I didn't have to work to take some time off.
And then, so that confidence that you build, is that something that you've always had as a kid, or is it just something that you developed as you started to kind of gain experience? Kind of everybody's different, right? So like I can think back where, for me, my family kind of, and I would say both my mom and my dad kind of helped build that confidence. Mm-hmm. Like I remember my mom had this is the earliest memory, she had a blender that
Mm-hmm.
stopped working. She's like, oh, it doesn't work anymore. I was like, can I have it? I was like, I'm gonna fix it, right?
Uh-huh.
In my mind, I was like, I'm gonna fix it. All I did was tear it apart, but to me, it was like, I wasn't able to put it back together and it didn't fix it. But taking it apart kind of helped build a confidence that, oh, okay, once you see what's inside, like, oh, this isn't so complicated. It's not so hard, right? Like, as a 8-year-old, somewhere like...
It's very similar. I went through something very, very similar. My grandma used to listen to music every afternoon. And it was kind of sad because it's like mariachi stuff and like very like, I want to die because of you didn't love me, stuff like this, right? So I remember those afternoons with, like all this sad music playing. And then her, I don't know, radio casetera? I don't know how to say.
Yeah, her radio player.
With the cassettes, right? It just broke. And I was like, I'll fix it. And I didn't know how. But the same, I opened it and I believe I was able to fix it because it was just something loose. It wasn't something that I learned everything, but it was like, oh, it looks like this thing got loose and then it started working. So it's like, I think when it comes to work-related confidence, it was because when I started to work in IT, I was able to do things without a lot of
hand-holding, a lot of teaching. So you were figuring it out on your own.
Yeah. And then in this project that I told you about, I was pretty confident because I knew I could get it done. It's like, and now I know that you can always search. Whenever you get stuck in some problem, you can ask. And if you don't have anybody that can help you in the office, right, you can search online and you can always find. It's not impossible, Only maybe some people that is doing some crazy research that is completely new, it's probably harder for them, But I don't know. The confidence just came out of, I guess, also not speaking English and then speaking English and having a better job than, like what I was doing cleaning tables before. It was.
So just slowly over time, right? Just picking up different skills and say, oh, I can learn this, I can learn that. So eventually you start to get to the point where you're like, I can learn anything.
Yeah.
Like I'll figure it out. I may not know it when I start.
Yeah.
But eventually you know that you feel that you can get it done.
Yeah.
Okay. So then how long after you came back did it take you to eventually then find a job and what did you end up, what was the role?
I think I was out for like 4 months. And then when I was already back and I don't have a job, then start panicking, right? It's like, I have to find something, I have 2 kids and, a family, right? I think it was like 4 months and I went back into IT. And I didn't want, right? Because you feel like, I'm already working as a QA engineer and now I'm going back as a IT support guy. It was feeling like I don't know how to say, like a downgrade. But being there was fun too. Like I could innovate, let's say. And I'm not, when it comes, I feel like I can learn everything, but when it comes to programming, I'm not really good at it. Like it's kind of, I feel bored when I'm reading. I'm not into, I wanna be a C programmer or a Java programmer. I prefer the programming that I do for automation. Is much simpler, but I'm solving problems still. But I never really, like, at the beginning I thought I'm gonna be a developer someday. Now it's like I don't want to be a developer. I like what I do, and when it comes to QA, you know more about the entire ecosystem, let's say, than the developers, because they're focused on a couple things, So they're like, oh, I don't even know how to do that, and they say it because they are not focused on that, right? But I know how it works, the entire system, right? So it's like maybe I didn't code it, but I know what is it for and how the customers use it. So to me, it's more interesting when it comes to even project management. I never done it, but I like what they do. When you manage things versus just sitting and coding. To me, it's not really exciting.
Because you're getting to understand a lot more of everything instead of, hey, like even, just your one part, you see everything. You're understanding what the customer's doing, what the programmer's doing, so you're able to kind of put it all together.
Yeah, even the business side, you understand a little more. And sometimes, not all of them, right? But sometimes developers are just like, whatever, I just did it, They told me to do it, and I just did it. They don't care if it's the best they could do. Is like, this is what they wanted, this is what I did.
And then how long were you there in that IT role?
It was another short, I think it was like 4 months, because I was already applying. It's like, man, if you see I have a folder on Gmail, right? There's like thousands of emails for job search. I was always searching. And because I didn't have experience, right? So nobody even got back to me. Like sometimes like, oh, thank you for applying, but we don't feel like you are a fit. And I was used to it, and I didn't feel sad. I felt sad when I was called to an interview, and I'm like, I'm gonna get it, and then it's like, somebody had more experience, and so kind of like that's what made me move fast between a role and another one, is that I had in the background applications going for a long time.
Yeah, so you weren't like, oh, I'm in this role, I'm gonna leave it alone. There was, if you're applying everywhere, right, and especially if it's not the type of role that you want now, you weren't like, well, I'll stop searching, I'll just let it happen. You're like, nope, I'm gonna keep going.
Yeah.
And eventually the right job will find you.
And it was until after this, another, the back to IT, I went into another casino gaming manufacturer, that I kind of relaxed, because it was a pretty relaxed job. I didn't have to worry that much. We just did the job and it was okay. And I wasn't looking, and I was already making a little more. So I kind of felt comfortable. But then LinkedIn, the people start, hey, we're looking for somebody with experience and stuff like this. And then that's how, when I moved to my new role, and it was very short, but it was a kind of like a smaller company versus those big ones. And the big one felt that I'm not learning anything anymore. So they said, you're gonna make more money, which was good, right? But at the same time, this is a small company that is trying to take on the big guys. And that's why I went to that one. Most like, I just was looking for a challenge, and not just relax and be there. In all the places that I've been, you always have somebody that has been there for like 20 years working. I didn't want to be that guy, that just relaxes and does the same thing and doesn't learn anything new, and just does until you retire. I wanted to learn more stuff. And that's why I moved to this other one. It was a bad experience. I didn't like the founder. He wasn't somebody pleasant to work with. And I left, I think it was 3 months or 2 months, something like this. I was like, I didn't leave early just because I was applying for a refinance of a condo I had. And I have to have a job to do the refinance. So it's like, and the moment that happened and I found another job, it's like I was gone. Even something that I don't recommend people doing, this thing, you always want to leave a job in good terms. This one, I was like, I'm leaving today. I didn't give them the 2 weeks. It's just, I didn't feel like being there anymore.
And yeah, it's not recommended, but then there's some times where just it's tough, right? Especially if you're in a bad situation, or the culture's toxic, or you're just bad management, whatever. It could be any number of reasons. And to your point, right? Like, I don't recommend doing it over and over and over, but there's times where you kind of have to prioritize yourself and understand and say, okay, well,
And make them understand too. It's like, you cannot be like this with people, you know. Maybe not with me, but they were rude to other people. It's like, I don't. Come on, they're working for you. You have to take care of them, not yell at them, stuff like this, you know. So.
And you went over there for a challenge. So even during that 3 months, so even though the manager and all that was bad, were you able to learn anything, or was?
They were actually pretty happy with me, because they had this automation software that they pay a license, expensive license for, and they had it sitting there for a long time. They didn't have anybody to work on it. So I went specifically for that, and I learned it, you know, like pretty quick. And I already had some automation going for them in like my first month. And they were like, man, you're doing pretty good. Other people, you know, they were like, Carlos, you're doing great, you know. We want this type of people in this place. And I was happy. I liked it. But it wasn't bad at the beginning. It was when my manager left because of this stressing situation, that it was like, you're not a manager, but now you're going to get her job done because she's gone. And then I started to deal with this guy, and he wasn't. And I was like, dude. But also, you know, you need the money, right? So at some point, the guy is like, well, if you're not happy with this, we can talk about something else. And I had to bite my tongue and be like, not yet. You know, wait.
Yeah. And then, so then once you signed your paperwork, you got ready, did you have another job, or did you just quit and be like, I'll find something?
Even if I think I was ready to leave no matter what, but having 2 kids and everything is like, I think I was lucky to get at the same time when I closed on the refinance. Like, it was at the same time that I got this offer from, and it was a startup, and that's when I started more into learning new things, because I didn't know anything about web services or real automation. You know, like only this basic automation, but not like coding to automate something on web apps, stuff like this. It was this startup based on Redwood City that had offices in Las Vegas, and they had, I believe, 2 back-end developers here, and all the front-end guys were in Redwood City. So it was cool, you know, working for a startup that is doing something completely new. They're trying to get customers right, and it's flashy, and there's a lot of young people. I was already older. I went for training to Redwood City, like 2 different weeks, but it was like 1 week there, 1 week here in Vegas to know what they do here, and then 1 week back over there to learn more about like the engineering part of you know, the QA part that I was going to be testing. So it was pretty cool, you know, to work for a startup. It's like, it's fast, you know, everybody is on Slack. I mean, you ask something and everybody's answering. It's like, not like bigger companies and old school companies that you have to send emails, and the email is reply maybe, I don't know, it's like these big threads. It was cool, you know. I didn't know about Slack. I didn't know about all of these new technologies or, you know, frameworks that they use. It was exciting.
The way that you got that job, so I know prior you said LinkedIn, you know, recruiter had reached out to you for this role that where you're at now for this startup. Was it something that you applied on LinkedIn? The recruiter reached out to you?
I found it on LinkedIn, and it was cool because it was based on Las Vegas, right? So I applied, but this is another thing that is hopefully useful for some people. Don't give up, you know, because I had an interview. I don't remember if it was face-to-face online with Zoom or something like that, or if it was just over the phone. The manager of QA, or the QA lead they use, he didn't think I could do it because I didn't have any experience. It's like, you know, Carlos sounds like a good guy, but we better find somebody that already has experience with automation. So they say, sorry, but no. And the lady that was I think she reached out to me. Now thinking about it, she reached out to me. And that's why I had the interview. And then I emailed her, and I was like, hey, I really like what you guys are doing. I know that I don't have experience, but I can learn, you know. Look at my resume. I don't know. I had a conversation with her. I don't know if it was through email or over the phone. And I was lucky that she was the girlfriend of the founder, so she had some power. And she's like, I like what you say on this email or whatever, so I'm gonna give you another chance, and you're gonna go have an interview with the boss of the QA guy. So, and it was here in town, it was in person. And I went, and they liked me because looking at me, listening to me is different than just like looking at the resume. So I was able to get the job because this other guy liked what I had to say in the interview. And the other two guys, the developers also, I guess they liked that. Maybe I didn't have experience, but I could show that I had some potential. In my opinion, I think that's what they thought.
And that's interesting because that's not something that's common, right? So I can't think of a time that I've ever. So actually, let me go back and make sure I'm understanding. So when you went through, and did they tell you that you weren't going to get the job, or was it just on your own? So they had
No, they told me no. Thank you, for your time. I don't know if it was the guy or she. Somebody told me like, we're looking for somebody with experience on automation, and you don't have it, but we'll keep your contact. That's always say that, someday we'll call you back. Never happens, but.
So then, and it was really just that you found that job so interesting that that's what made you take that initiative to go through and say, hey, you know what? I may not have the experience, but here's why I think that I would be good for it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
I've only heard of probably one other person where they've had that type of situation where they were like, hey, no, here's why, and here's why you should reconsider me. And probably wouldn't do it for every job, but I mean, if there's something that you really want, or you feel like there's a fit and maybe there's just something that's missing, I mean, that's a good piece of advice to go through and say, hey, you know what?
If it's really worth it for you, give it a try. And I don't regret it, It's like I learned so many things that I didn't even know they existed,
Yeah, and that's something that, like you said, you can't always show potential. You can't show like, hey, I'm a hard worker, I'm this, based on a resume or an application. So, and it sounds like you were able to express that information as well to say, hey, I can do this. Not only can I do it, but I'm gonna probably do it better than somebody that has more experience.
Now that you say that, I believe I mentioned something like that. It's like something like, I don't just do what people tell me to do in my job. I always try to do, if I have an idea, maybe we can do this better. So I'm always trying to improve things. And I think that's what she liked. And, she told the guy, hey, give this guy another chance. I went, and I had a longer beard, and the guy also had a long beard. So it was like, this also helped, I believe, because everybody was bothering him that he was looking like crap, right? And I was almost there, like almost there. So it's like, these things help, this guy also has a shitty beard. You know what I mean?
No, and it does, because sometimes it just takes that, one, you're able to show your personality, right? Hey, and then two, just you find a common ground with somebody and say, hey, hey, we both have a beard, and I've done that before with other people. You comment, be like, oh man, I like your beard, and there's people like I grow a beard, but I've seen people that have like really big beard. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. Like I like the way you keep it, and things like that, and you start to establish a relationship, right? Sometimes it leads to something, sometimes it doesn't, but at least they probably, when he left, he probably remembered you, right? Like, oh, I like him, I like his personality. Oh man, he also has a beard like me, so you start to establish a connection or a...
And this is just a guess, he never told me, but it's just a guess, like we all look with the...
with similar.
It probably helped.
And for that role then, once you got into it, were you able to do a lot of kind of what you, I don't want to say promise, but what you explained to them, like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do better. And were you able to do that, and did they see that?
It was hard because it was like I would say big, not like for a big corporation, but for a startup, they had, I think, 4 or 5 QA engineers at the same time when I joined. So, for me to be the one that was automating, it wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen because they had like 2 or 3 guys that they were very experienced. doing all the automation. So I was doing a lot of the manual testing. Man, it's like, and they had a very complicated UI with maps and things. So it was like, I even had like pain for so much, testing manual. It's like I bought like maybe 3 or 4 different mouses because like this pain doesn't go away. So it took me some time for me to start doing automation with them because of the seniority of these guys that knew a lot more. But they were pretty cool. It was younger people willing to share their knowledge. In some places you don't find that. Somebody, they just want to keep it for themselves. But these guys, one guy came for like 3 days from Redwood City to Vegas, to train me on automation. And the company was cool. It was fun. The holiday party was like in a club, bunch of alcohol. It was cool. I remember, nobody was, maybe 2 guys when I was in Redwood City. We went for lunch, everybody together, right? And I didn't even know about Venmo at the time. It was something new. Like, okay, who's gonna pay? I'm gonna pay, and everybody send me. It's like, oh, that's cool. So, but it was interesting that nobody was from the 80s. It was maybe me and another guy. Everybody was from the 90s. Everybody was young.
And how long were you there in that role? And it sounds like it was a good environment, right? People are teaching you, you're learning a lot. I mean, it took a while, right? It wasn't instantaneous, but it sounds like you stuck around at least long enough to where I'm gonna say you probably established another good relationship or trust with those other people for them to say, hey, you know what? I like Carlos and he's willing to learn. And is that something, did you ask them, hey, can you teach me? Did it come about, or just how did that relationship?
I think so. It was, we worked together, right? But remotely. Like I was the only QA in Vegas and they were over there in California, right? So I always was asking questions, and I think they like that, and it's like, but why is this way? And maybe it sounds stupid, but I still don't get it. So I asked again. I think I understand this part, but I still don't get this. And this guy is still my friend. We're not close friends, but once in a while, it's like, hey, how you doing? Even he was trying to get me with his company at some point because he switched to another company. Anyways, they were very friendly, very good people. I really like working with them, and I believe I asked. I was pushing for like, hey, I also want to do automation, like I just don't want to. I don't want to do just this manual testing. Anybody can do the manual testing, You just tell them we need to make sure that this happens, and you just click and do this and whatever. So I also was finding things. How can I say? The company was gathering events worth of news kind of thing, and they were using social media to grab those. So I had a couple of ideas that helped them get more events based on, it's like, oh, you guys are using this service, right, that gives you this related to traffic, for example, and we know that there is an accident, big accident, that there's a lot of traffic. So why don't we start grabbing social posts from this area at this time? And they're like, hell yeah, And it was like they were into the numbers because it's a startup. They need to show the numbers to the investors or to people that wants to get their services. Like they were happy with me because I was not just doing, I'm just gonna do this manual testing and keep doing and be okay with that. I was also thinking, and sharing my thoughts about how can we improve things.
And how long were you there? And
I think it was a little more than 2 years. Okay, let me think. Yeah, I think 2 years. But they were moving to another state, and they were gonna close the office here. They were moving to Utah, and I didn't want to go to Utah for some reason at the time. So that's when I started to look for another job, and then I found this other job with a big bank based in Virginia. They're a huge corporation that can pay for relocation. So after the interview, they flew me there. I didn't think I was gonna get selected because of my programming. I mentioned that before. I'm not that into I like what you can do, but I'm not into like I'm gonna learn this and structures and data structures and all this. It's like, not my thing. So the last part of the interview was like the entire day. They call it, I don't know, like they have a name for this, power day or something like this, where you go and be nervous all day. And you go with one person and then another one and then another. And the last one was the programming. And I was already, it felt like you can feel when you have an interview, you can feel that they are liking you, right? Or they're like, sure, you know? So I felt like everything went well, but I knew when the programming test or whatever comes, I'm not gonna do good. And somehow, and I explained to them, hey, I understand the logic. I know what needs to get done. I'm just not good at the syntax, is writing it down because I never done coding, only some automation, but not really like, oh, we need this and that and just build it, right? Never done it, so it's not my fault. It's just, I have the logic to understand, oh, we need some loop in here, but typing it in, if it's different language and I never had experience, you can't. It's like, it's almost impossible, right? So they call it like pseudocode when you're like, and I think I did okay with that. And maybe the other guys like me and they had some certain system of points. I gave him good points. This one didn't get that many points, but at the end got enough points to give him a chance, kind of thing.
And then, so they paid for relocation. So you were okay going to Virginia, but I'm assuming that the one, when they moved to Utah, you were going to have to move on your own.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or go to Redwood City, and Redwood City was super expensive. It's like I cannot afford. I had not just my kids, my ex-wife and her mom, and then my mom. It's like, it was a big family. It's like I can't possibly afford, not even a house over there, but an apartment with 3 bedrooms. It was too expensive.
And then, interview went well. For a lot of times for these bigger companies, so how does that work? Were they upfront about salary? Did you have to negotiate? So what's your experience, or is there anything that you can share from that process, right? Understanding that it sounds like you take initiative to go through and explain to somebody and say, hey, here's why I'm good for this job. When it came to salary negotiations, and I know that that's something early on in my career, I struggled. Like, I didn't know. Sometimes they would post the range. And one of the things that I learned is they would ask you, what do you make, or what are you looking to make? And I didn't know that early on. Like, if they ask you, oh, well, what are you currently making? Oh, I make this. Let's say I'm making $70,000, but I see that this job is making $100,000. As soon as they know, oh, well, you're only making 70. If we give them 80 or 85, if we give them less than what they're looking to get, it's still a raise for them.
Yeah.
Right? So that was something that I learned, that, hey, if someone asks you, what are you currently making? You don't have to answer. You can just say, well, what's the range for that role? Is that something that you had learned, being able to go through, and not in a bad way, right? But yeah. I've had other people that have done the same thing, where they've had multiple jobs and they learn that along the way. So by the time you're getting to this big, national bank, did you have that skill?
So I feel like my case is very particular, because I was like, how do you say, like hustling? I want to get there, but I don't have what to show for that. Like, you go for casino gaming. Nobody cares. Only people in casino gaming cares about your experience in casino gaming. And I'm going to a bank, that is looking for an automation engineer. And my only automation experience was with this startup that I was working with them for only 2 years. So it's like, does he have a lot of experience? Not really, right? So I remember reading about resumes, you have to tailor your resume for the job that you're applying. I didn't have the luxury of, I was just applying like crazy. and I also didn't have the experience to move to other industries easily. I'm sure I could have moved from one company in gaming to another one much easier than going to this one. So I couldn't bargain. Like, I couldn't ask for more.
You couldn't negotiate.
Yeah. And also, normally the salaries, I'm not, I don't have proofs, but I am sure that the developers in the startup and me were making a lot less money than the people in California, So it wasn't like a big salary for me to, I make this much, so I want more. So for them, it's like, he makes this little, so it's good for us because we don't have to pay him that much. But it was a good raise. But the move, having family, all these things are also I think I was reading something like I think one of your podcasts, something like the cost of moving. I think somebody mentioned
Right.
it. It's not just we just move to another side of the country and just for more money. It's you have to think about it. And,
Yeah, there was. It was Matthew. So the same thing. He looked, when he was getting ready to move, he looked at and said, okay, here's what I make here. Here's the cost of living in Las Vegas. I think it was like North Carolina. So he went and looked and found out, okay, what is it going to cost for me to be in North Carolina? Okay, maybe cost of living is more expensive there, so you can't just go through and do more. I had this similar one where there was a job in Silicon Valley, right up in Northern California, where when they gave me the salary amount, I looked at it, like you hear a number and, it was something like, it was a pretty significant, right? I want to say over like 200,000 or something. Like, oh, wow. But you start looking and you start doing the math and you're like, okay, wait a minute. Here's what it costs to not even buy a house. Here's what it costs to rent a house. Oh, Nevada doesn't have state tax. California does have a state tax and it's high. Right? So then now I'm paying more taxes. You pay more. You start looking at it. I did the math and I was like, it's almost, I can't remember if it was a lateral move. Even though you hear a bigger number, when you start doing the cost of living, it was either going to be the same amount or slightly less. And I had to, it was a struggle because it was a big company. It was somebody that I was like, man, I really want to work there. Maybe it's okay to kind of take that step back, knowing that I can move up, I can move forward. It will look good on my resume. I'll probably learn a lot of skills because I had a friend that worked there, so he helped me out a lot. But similar to you, I was like, I had a family, so it's not just me.
Yeah.
And ultimately, what made me not take it is when they offered me the cost, the relocation cost. It was, I don't remember the number, but let's say it was $2,000, and I was like, and that's $2,000 before taxes, right? So then you're like, well, taxes, like, man, that's not enough to move a family of four from Las Vegas to California. That barely pays for a rental truck and the gas just to get there. So I was like, well, no, I
Not
can't.
worth it. Yeah,
it wasn't worth it. Did I make the right choice? And I don't know. I think it worked
I feel
out.
like those chances, when you have a family, is different. You cannot just go for it. If you're single, you go for it. It doesn't matter if you're gonna go live with roommates or whatever. If you're living in your own house in Vegas, but you're gonna go to California, Silicon Valley, it's like all the buzz and all these new things. I think it's really worth it, but it's not as easy when you already have kids.
Yeah. So then, for that relocation out to Virginia, like how did that work out? Like
I was so proud of myself. I was like, wow, they're paying me to move. I'm like, amazing. I was happy.
Yeah.
So it happened. We went and we loved the place.
And how was the role for you?
Boring. Not because of them, but because the system that they were using. It's like I was into one of those CRMs, and it's like testing that, like somebody already tested, and we're just testing our custom builds. And there's always something to learn when you start, but then later it's like, and it's also a bigger company that has all these ceremonies and meetings, and you're like half of the day in meetings, and the other half you're getting the job done. So going from a startup to this, it's a big switch. Even I remember having problems when it comes to, they're like very specific about, you gotta be good to people, you gotta be nice to people, and I was too upfront. It's like, hey, what are we doing here?
Yeah, too honest.
What are we doing here? It's like, for what? It's like, oh, Carlos, you're not supposed to talk like this to people, and like in separate meetings, it's like, we need you to calm down, it's like, I just want to get stuff done, but it's a different world.
Right.
And the startup people are like saying bad words to each other. It's like, what the dude, and stuff like this, right? And in the banks, it's everything is like, but I learned, even though I didn't like it at the beginning, it was good to learn about being more polite, let's say, more always something like always assume good intent. It was something that, and it's good, somehow helps you, I don't know, like mature and like I like it because in their way they're preparing you to grow too and to be a manager or something like this. You know, you have to you don't have it's not a startup. We got the money. You know, we want to do things slow and well done. The startup is like we just need.
And also in those type of roles, and they're teaching you, and it's come up a bunch of times, is soft skills, right?
Uh-huh.
Being able to, even if something's like, hey, why are we doing this?
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you can say the same thing, you just approach it differently. You use different wording, like, hey, I don't understand what, I don't understand why we're doing this. There's got to be a better way that we can do it. Can we explore those types of options as opposed to, why are we doing this nonsense?
Yeah,
right. So
that's right.
it's the way that it's the words that you use. It's the way that you express it.
Mm-hmm.
You're getting the same message, but it sounds like you learned my approach has to change to how I'm doing this.
And it was good, it feels stupid when it hits you, like I remember they put me on hey, you gotta improve this, otherwise you're gonna be gone. I was like, what? Like, I'm doing so many things and improving things is like never experienced that they're like, yeah, it's good that you're doing all of that, but we don't want these other things, it's like, oh. And at the end, it's like, even stuff like they said, like, if you have an idea, you cannot just go and like, this works, I'm sure, let's do it. It's like, you have to sell it to the team. You go to the project manager, you go to the other QA, you go to somebody else, and it's like, and you sell it. It feels like it's stupid, but it's actually not. It's something that works, With friends, let's say, if you're in high school and you want to do something, but people are not going, hey, what about this? And you talk, what about this? So it's something very basic, but we don't think about it. Especially, I think, when you're coming from a different background or a different country, it's like you just say whatever you think. You're not worried about what they're gonna think.
Yeah, it's very cultural, right? So I know the same thing. So my family comes from Mexico, and we go down there, and there's a lot of times where, depending on where you're at, that it's a very upfront. You just say it, right? There's usually not that thought process of like, hey, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way. Right? It's very much like, hey, you say what comes to your mind or how you're feeling. Hey, we shouldn't do this, and here's why, right? Like,
yeah.
And nobody, for the most part, most people usually don't take it in a bad way because it's a cultural thing. Whereas here, it's, especially in corporate, I won't even say the U.S., but like in the U.S. corporate culture, it's very much, hey, you have to really be careful of how you word things, how you're saying stuff. You can't just say the first thing that comes to your mind, right? Like, there has to be a filter in the way that you're coming across and approaching things.
And at the time, so during this time, I got divorced, I had personal issues and all of this, but I also, I started to date, and this is personal, but it's some tip, that can be helpful to somebody. I was pissed off that they are treating me this way because I'm giving them results, and they don't want just those results. They want me to switch who I am. This is how I was thinking. Like, what? This is who I am. Like, why I have to be different? And then I was dating this American girl, right? Talking about it, and she's like, this is what you should do. Just tell them this. Hey, listen. It's my cultural background that makes me be this way, And they are all about inclusive, and all of this is like, they can't just be like, no, we still want you. And things switch when I started to use those words, like, my background is from another place, and I'm more direct and stuff like this. So even the people that were like, Carlos, even they were like, and it's like, and kind of like, they also worry about you being like, hey, you guys are racist, or kind of thing, They worry about me complaining that they don't accept me the way I am. So it leveled. It wasn't just like, dude, you have to change. It was more like, now we get you, kind of thing.
Now we get you, but it sounds like at the same time you also kind of learn, okay, maybe I'll kind of meet you in the middle, right? It's not just like, hey, no.
Yeah.
And that is, I'm glad you brought that up, because that is important to say, hey, like, I don't necessarily want to change who I am, but I understand that there's certain there's certain rules, or there's certain norms, but hey, give me a chance. Here's what I'm used to. Here's how I've been for 20 something years. it's not that easy to just say, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do 100% what you are, and oh, I'm sorry, and then, you know, it takes time. Like,
yeah. So actually, like now, you know, if I talk to somebody that is younger or whatever, like now I use those things that I learned back then. It's not that many years ago, but it's you learn from everything, you know.
you learn from experience, which is taking time. So then how long were you there in that role? And it sounds like it was the other thing is it's a drastic change, right? Going from a startup to a big established company that has processes and procedures. So it was boring. How long were you there, and did you pick any skills up? And then kind of what made you?
So I think I felt like I was like I'm going, improving, getting, you know, better money, better positions, more experience. But then this personal thing, you know, divorce, fighting for the kids and all of this, it kind of like I was like this and like, and then things change in my mind, you know. It's like now it's not about getting to the top. Now it's like I need to be near my boys, you know what I mean? So it's like my priorities change. And I wasn't like, oh, I need to move. And I really, like, they gave me, so it was like the reason I'm here is because I wanted to be near my boys, you know, back in Las Vegas. And kind of like, what's more important, right? Like continue to go, move from this good company to a better company. Now, let's say I can be single, you know, I don't have to be a dad. I can go for the startups, I can go learn, I can go and afford to live in a different place. I could have done that, but I didn't want to because, you know, like you only have kids for a certain amount of years, right? It's like I'd rather be a dad. And that's like, you know, it was like, boom. And then, not like this, but not going to a company that is bigger, but to a smaller company that now I work, I love where I work, I love what I do, but how many people is gonna know about a casino gaming company? I don't think that many. So the decision of switching from the big corporate that everybody knows to this one that nobody knows yet, maybe someday, it's another decision that was based on my personal things, you know. It's like I just want to be I moved back to Vegas and still working for the company in Virginia. So I was like at 6 in the morning studying. So it's like kind of, it takes a toll after some time, you know. At the beginning, it's like, oh, whatever, you know, I finish early so I can do many other things in the afternoon. But then later it's like, I can't even have, you know, some drinks with my friends because like I have to be so up early, so up so early, you know. So somebody was looking on LinkedIn for a guy with the experience I had, you know, somebody that has automation experience, QA experience, but at the same time knows the casino gaming industry. And I was lucky that they found my profile and they're like, offer me, you know, talk about it. And another good thing is like working in Virginia, I had a better salary than in Las Vegas. Let's say like, I feel like maybe now it's different. I haven't been looking for jobs for a while, so, but I always felt that they pay less here than in other parts of the country, right? So I told them, hey, listen, I like what you're showing me. I want to work with you guys. However, if what you are offering me is this little, over there with the raises that they give annually, I'll make this in 2 years, you know? It's like, there's not really a point. So maybe if you can offer me a little more, that will make me want to switch, you know? And then they did that, and then like, let's do it. And now I'm sure they're pretty happy with my performance, and I'm also happy working with them, learning and, you know, collaborating with what we're doing. So
No, and it's true. A lot of times we don't think about the personal stuff, right? It plays a big role. As much as we think that, oh no, it's just you're moving up the corporate ladder, like it's come up a bunch of times, right? Like you have to start, you're at different phases of your career, right? You have family or you don't have a family, or you're married, you're not married, kids, no kids. All that plays a factor into what jobs you're going to take. It's not always just, oh, well, this pays more money, I'll take that. Or, hey, this company is a well-known name, you know, like, hey, I'm going to go work for Google versus some startup that nobody's ever heard of. all of those things play a factor, right? So it's important, and I'm glad you brought it up, that whatever we're going through personal, in our own lives has an effect, not even just in searching for jobs, but even just in doing the job in the role that you're at, right? Like that takes a toll. Like if you're having problems at home, if you're not happy, like as much as we try and keep work and home separate, it's not always the case.
It's almost impossible. I'll give you another example of what happened during this time. I always wanted to, if I'm bored, I want to do something else. And this company was big enough for you to, hey, you want to move to this other team, cool. We help you out and then you can go. But because I had all these personal issues, they were very supportive, my team. It's like, even though I didn't feel like I was learning anymore, I wanted to continue with this team just because of the support they gave me, I could travel for, court cases and stuff like this. And they were never like, Carlos, what the hell? They were like, hey, we know this is more important. So, you feel like, man, even if I'm not going to continue growing and I'm not going to get to be a director in this company, but it's, you want to give back. And that's what I felt.
Oh, that's good. And one of the things that I want to ask is, I come from an infrastructure background, right? So servers, storage, network, a lot of that, picking up those skills or understanding where I can learn that, it's pretty easy, right? If you go, you're like, you want to be a network engineer, go look up. There's tons of videos, people, just Cisco all over the place. Mm-hmm. For a QA engineer, so I know you touched on, having some developer, for some of these roles, they do look for that developer skills, automation. So what did you do to kind of learn those skills? So I'm assuming a lot of it's on the job, mm-hmm. But also, is there anything that you did outside, or is there somebody that's looking that says, hey man, I that sounds interesting to me? How would someone go about learning the skills to be a QA engineer who doesn't want to just click next? What mm-hmm. what would you recommend, or what are the things that you can do? Because again, I've heard QA engineers, I've QA testers, I've seen them. I work for a company that they did a lot of software development, but I don't know how they got to where they're at. Like I've heard your story, but how do you pick up those skills?
I think it's very particular and it's different, and it's not easy to get to it. Like you can find some tutorials on YouTube, people that does it, right? And they're teaching, but it's not as easy as, okay, I wanna be a Java developer, or I wanna learn. When I say easy, not easy to find it, or to follow a book. There's no book, So it's something that I don't know. Like, you cannot just decide, and who will want, Now it's like, I talk to my boys, right? They're a little bigger, so I'm like, hey guys, this is pretty easy. It looks complicated just because you see the code, the dark screen with the green letters or whatever. It looks, they're like, oh no, I don't understand. And I'm like, no, it's pretty simple. And I read a long time ago that being in QA, it's less stressing than being a developer. Kind of like it's one of those jobs that is like you enjoy the work-life balance more, because I love it, because I don't have to worry about like, oh, we broke something is not working in production. It's less stress. It's like, well, if I didn't test it well and I didn't really care, then we can find something in production. It's going to be on me, right? But if you have enough time and you know what you're doing and you understand what needs to be done, it's not that hard to make sure that things have some quality, Always there's going to be something that you cannot cover everything with tests, right? So always is going to be some little thing, but nothing like, for example, in what you say, like in infrastructure, something is down and you're on call, like, you're like 4 a.m, you have to do something QA. We're never on call. We just sleep, and then the next day you find out, it's like, oh, something went down and everybody was working. It's like, oh, as long as, and what happened? Oh, and it's almost never the software part, but it's more like something on the infrastructure part. So and I'm sure people that does QA for these infrastructure things, it's probably much more complicated, because we need the reliability and we need all of that. But when it comes to, I don't know how to call it, but these UIs or the back end that runs some feature for a customer is not, we're not testing, when, at least for me, I'm not testing that the server is reliable. I'm just making sure that the software does what it's supposed to do for the customer because they're using it for a specific purpose. So I'm sure that there is some QA more complicated, and they hold these builds. I remember in this company, they were saying that Amazon was like, they do, I don't know how many thousands of deployments a day or something like this. It's like, that's pretty cool, right? But we were not there. We were working with this CRM that is much simpler, and the tests that we were doing and whatever we were providing to our customers, it was so much simpler. So it's not that complicated, but I'm sure QA can be complicated too. I'm not really interested in getting there, I'm comfortable.
And that QA testing, all there sounds like, at least on the software side, all you're really doing is whatever the UI, the application, whatever the software is, are you just trying to, sounds like you're trying to find bugs or things that may not work, like, and is it just testing? So hey, I click on this button, it's not doing what I would think it's supposed to do, or
so this is another thing, and I don't mean to like QA is whatever. No, it's like there is a difference between being a tester and a quality assurance engineer. You're trying to have a product with quality. So it depends on what you do. Some people just focus on like, I'm gonna do this and it does what it's supposed to do and it's good. And some others, they're like, okay, this kind of works, but do we really want the customer to be clicking like 10 times to do these two things? So that's where it comes with the quality, right? And you talk to the project manager or whoever, depending on how your team is set up, right? If it's a big company, it takes longer for somebody. If it's a smaller company, I just tell my boss, dude, this doesn't make any sense because look, I have a video, I sent it to him. Oh yeah, you're right, we have to change that. And then it's like, we enter a ticket for it and we just switch it. So I dislike when managers or people in the interviews are like, a tester. It's like, no, it's like anybody can test. You can train a monkey to test stuff. But looking for the end product for the customer is more important than just making sure this works, like making it better.
Got it. So a QA engineer is not necessarily testing to make sure something works. Excuse me. So it's not testing to make sure that something works, but is it the most efficient way or is it the best experience for a customer? So it's not just like, hey, I clicked this button and it did what I needed to, but it's, I clicked this button and then I had to click 4 more when really maybe I only needed to click 2.
Yeah, we can skip these 3,
Okay.
So you are kind of like what the product people do, We want this, we have this idea, it's gonna look cool. But then you get into the details because you have to actually make sure that you get from here to there. And maybe the product owner or product manager, he's thinking of the bigger picture, You are getting into the specifics, This is like how somebody is actually gonna do it in the field, right? In like whatever office or whatever. But it's also the business part, right? Like product owners or product managers, they're thinking about business, how much money we're gonna save after we deploy this or something like this. But we as QA, we're making sure that the thing is the best possible. And it's funny because whenever I use a product or something that is like, why the hell is this thing like so stupid? It's like, I don't think they have QA, It's like, some people has more, some companies think QA is super important, and some other ones is like, oh, the developer can do their own QA. They just have to write code against their own test, but it's never the same, You can write code against your own test to make sure that the numbers come up right, but the user experience, when it comes to the back end, maybe you can do that, but when it comes to the front end, it's different. And I'm also lucky that there is some different tools that do, different frameworks you can use. I've chosen something I like, and I had the luxury of setting up the automation from start. So I chose what I like, and it's easier, I don't have to do a lot of Java code to automate some couple clicks. I just used something that I had experience with, and I told my manager, hey, I think we should go with this where I am now, because it's just easier. If I'm the lead and then somebody's gonna come, I don't have to teach them how to program. I just have to teach them how to use this tool to do some automation. And there's always some complex stuff, because also this framework is not what everybody uses. So you don't always find, like if I'm gonna find something about Java, you find so many answers, But this one is something else. I don't know if I should mention it, or it's something newer, smaller. So you pretty much find the founder answering all the questions, And it's pretty cool. I even spoke to this guy. I had meetings with. We bought the product there. They went from open source to for profit, and it's like, it's cool. I'm actually giving feedback to the founder. It's pretty cool.
No, that is. I don't know many. I don't know many situations where that's the case, right?
Sometimes you just go and you have to use what they already have, and they are very resistant to change, even if it will be easier,
Oh no, that's awesome. You've shared a lot. I've learned a lot. So even just towards the end, right? Like QA testing, I thought that it was more functionality, not just also usability, right? So that quality assurance, it's not just quality of does it work like it's supposed to, but is it the best kind of user experience? So I know we're kind of wrapping up here. Is there anything else that you think that might be important to share? Anything that maybe we might not, any question that you think that I didn't ask you that?
No, it's been pretty cool. Like we're just talking like friends, it's a very, very easy setup. I would say like some people are afraid of technology because they feel like they don't understand it. I would say gardening is harder than technology. You know what I mean? Like keeping up some plants alive and understanding what the issue is, nature is much harder, So technology is just something that if you put the time into learning it, you will learn it. And a lot of people is afraid of it. It's like, oh, I wasn't good at math. It's like, how many times have you been doing some calculus, like solving some differential equation when you're coding? Maybe someone that is doing something really advanced, right? Maybe, some AI or whatever. But some AI in some places I've been, it was just regular expressions. It wasn't artificial intelligence. It was just like something simple, But doing those tools, it's hard. But using them is easy. So even now developers, I believe before it was harder because you have to learn everything. But now they have, like you just grab this. I have a friend that tells me, no, it's like most of my job is not really coding. It's more like deployment issues, stuff like this. Even though I'm a Java developer, but like now Java is so big that you can find anything you need. Just grab the code, or this library or stuff like this. You just use it, and that's it. So I just would like to tell whoever is afraid of getting into it, it's like anybody can do it. It's not, and it's because at the same time, because people are afraid of doing it, we have this luxury of kind of relaxing, Not everybody want to get into it. So you have less competition. Even though there's a lot of people that just want to make the money, that's why they want to do it. A lot of people is applying, but at the same time, when you already have the job, when you already went through it and then you learn and you have some experience, it's a lot more relaxing than just doing any other job, like hustling to make sales or stuff like this, When it comes to not technology, but like if I'm a realtor, you have just certain amount of time to do this, and some realtors make a lot of money, but some of them they don't. I feel like if you kind of take the right decisions at the right time, you can. It's not that complicated to grow in the technology fields, and anybody can do it. I had a friend, just to finish, that he was, and this is when I just came and I was in the first IT job. He was from El Salvador too, so he was my friend just because he was from El Salvador. We didn't have anything than that in common, right, at the beginning. And he's like, he was in the help desk in the hotel, and I told him, hey, we just teach you. you know, and he moved, and now he's still in the technology side, but he never thought he was gonna be able to join the IT department, and he did it, and he's still there, you know. And it's like anybody can do it.
And there's so many different roles, right? People, a lot of times when they think technology, like, oh, I have to be a developer, I have to program, I have to do infrastructure. But there's so many different things. Like you said, QA, you know, a friend of mine, Oscar, he talked about, even he says that had he known, his dream would have been to do with sports, right? Like, just think about anything that you do, if you have a passion for something, if you have a passion for plants, you know, right? Like I don't. There's a lot of work. I'm sure there's technology around that, you know, like, hey, how do we test the soil? How do we do all these things? There's technology everywhere. You can find something that you can learn. You don't have to be a network person. You don't have to be, you know, a server person. Like, those are the things I think, like you mentioned, people who think technology's hard because I have to, you know, I don't like using my computer because there's this program that I don't like. Well, there's so much more outside of that. And if it's something that, like I said, people see the money, but it's not always that, you know, like you mentioned, right? You could go and make a ton of money and hate going to work, hating the people that you work for. It's finding that balance of, okay, I'm making good money, but I also enjoy what I do because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in the industry for 20 plus years, different roles, but it's because I enjoy constantly learning, doing new things. And I think that's what keeps me going and passionate about it.
Yeah. I think it's something I would, you know, always you can think about your kids, right? Do you want your kids to be in the office, learning all of this? Maybe being a farmer is much more fun, you know? But at the same time, I wouldn't tell my kids don't try it, you know, because it's something that allows you to learn so many things, you know, even behavioral things, as we spoke, right? So I would anybody to give it a try. It's worth it.
All right. Well, thanks. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and share your journey with us and just tell us more about your career. And yeah, thank you. And, you know, at some point, if you move on to do other roles, and, you know, I'd be happy to have you come back and tell us, you know, kind of what's changed and what you're.
Yeah. Thank you for having us. It's great what you're doing. You know, like you're giving information to people that can be useful for their lives. So thank you too.
All right. I appreciate it. Have a good one.